Started with something small. And stupid, really. I wasn't snooping, I swear on everything. I was just helping Sophie finish up some paperwork she left on the kitchen counter. She was running late that morning, and I figured I'd be a good husband and scan a few forms she needed for some quarterly report. She's a marketing director at a clean energy startup, so there's always some event flyer or slide deck or form floating around the house. She left her laptop bag open and papers were scattered everywhere, so I just began organizing them. That's when it caught my eye. A corner of thick, ivory-colored paper barely peeking out from behind her folder. Not standard printer stuff. I pulled it out, thinking it was an invitation or brochure. It was a receipt. Westlake Ridge Lodge, Napa Valley. King Suite. Late checkout. 1:30 p.m. Romantic weekend package. Includes couples massage. Breakfast for two. Welcome champagne. Date of stay. Thursday, September 14th to Friday, September 15th. Card holder, Sophie Dalton. My heart didn't immediately sink. Honestly, my first instinct was confusion. I read it twice, checked the dates again. It didn't make sense. Thursday, September 14th. She told me she had an industry dinner that night, one of those awful seated events where you talk in circles with LinkedIn people. As she put it, she said she was skipping it because she was exhausted after a long week. I even remember texting her, suggesting we do takeout and watch that dumb reality show she pretends to hate. She replied, "Rain check. Brains fried. Just gonna crash early." Except now, here was proof that instead of crashing at home or networking over soggy risotto, she had booked a romantic suite in Napa. Not just any room either, a package. A couple's massage breakfast for two. Not the kind of thing you reserve by accident. The kicker? It was paid with her corporate card. That detail made my brain do backflips trying to justify it. I stood there with the receipt in my hand like it was a live wire. My first thought wasn't she's cheating. It was more like, what the hell is this? I didn't even tell her I found it. I tucked it right back where I found it, scanned the documents she needed, and went about my day. But something shifted, not just in how I saw her, but in how I started paying attention. She came home that night like nothing had happened. Tired. Hair tied up. A little cranky. She plopped her bag on the couch and muttered something about another pointless strategy meeting. I nodded along, trying not to stare too hard. Trying not to notice how fresh her nails looked. Or the tiny trace of shimmer in her hair. Not glitter exactly, but that kind of sheen that comes from a high-end hotel shampoo. I waited until the next morning to bring it up. We were having breakfast. She was scrolling her phone, sipping almond milk coffee, barely looking up. I tried to keep my tone casual. Hey, does your company ever book hotels for outside vendors? Like romantic getaways? She blinked, looked up, cocked her head. What? Just curious. I saw a receipt for Westlake Ridge. Looked like a couple's thing. There was maybe half a second of surprise in her face. Then it vanished. Oh God. That thing? She gave a short laugh and rolled her eyes. No, that was a corporate mix-up. They booked it for a client rep, Greg or someone, and used my card by mistake. I had to call and get the extras refunded. I didn't even stay there. She said it with the kind of practiced ease that sounded smooth. Too smooth. I didn't challenge her. Just nodded slowly, as if that answered everything. But she didn't stop there. She leaned back and gave me a sideways look, the kind that mixes sarcasm and subtle criticism. You know, you've been acting really weird lately. Is something going on with you? Like, are you okay? What do you mean? I don't know, she said, sipping her coffee. You've been kind of, I don't know, suspicious? Like, every time I say I'm working late, you act like I'm up to something. That wasn't true. At least not until now. I'm not suspicious, I said carefully. I just asked about a receipt. Her voice tightened a notch, still calm but firmer now. Well, maybe don't go digging through my stuff if you're just going to make weird assumptions. It's not a good look, Ethan. The conversation died there. She didn't elaborate, didn't offer to show me the refund, didn't mention Greg again. It was like she expected me to just accept her story and move on. And I almost did. Or maybe I wanted to. But the more I replayed it in my head, the more things didn't add up. She never mentioned that trip beforehand, and Sophie isn't the kind of person who forgets to tell me where she's going. We used to joke about being oversharers. We had shared calendars, synced grocery lists, find my iPhone tracking in case we ever lost each other at the airport. But lately, she had been pulling away. That was the first real sign. Not just the receipt, but how she turned it around. How quickly she made it about me. About my tone. My assumptions. Like the problem wasn't what I saw, but that I saw it at all. And for a while I let myself believe her. Because I wanted to. Because the alternative was unthinkable. Because when you love someone, your brain becomes an expert at damage control. But something shifted that morning. That little seed of doubt didn't go away. It started to grow. I didn't talk about it, didn't press her again. But I started to watch. To listen more closely. Not in a paranoid way, at least not at first. Just observant. Over the next few days, I began to notice things I'd overlooked before. Her phone suddenly had a new lock screen. The previews stopped showing on messages. She started charging it face down on the nightstand. Something she'd never done in the 8 years we'd been together. Our shared calendar, once filled with color-coded events, suddenly had long stretches of gray. No entries. She said she was keeping it simple because her work got hectic. Fair enough. But on Wednesday nights, always Wednesday, she stayed out late. Partner dinners, she called them. Networking happy hours. She used to come home tired and chatty, rehashing boring conference details while changing into sweats. Now she came home quiet, changed clothes in the bathroom, and tossed them straight in the laundry. No trace of where she'd been, no stories, no leftovers. I'm not saying the receipt proved everything. Didn't, but it cracked something open. Something I had no idea had even started to rot. It was the first moment I realized. I no longer knew if she was telling me the truth. And worse, I wasn't sure she cared if I knew. After the receipt incident, I told myself to let it go. And for a few days I tried. I really did. But something had changed. It wasn't just the awkward explanation she gave, or the fact that she never mentioned it again. It was the way I suddenly started seeing things. Things I'd been blind to before. Or maybe things I didn't want to see. The next few weeks blurred together in this haze of doubt. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask follow-ups. I just started paying attention, quietly, methodically, the way you do when you feel something slipping away but can't quite prove it. Started with her phone. We used to be open about everything. Devices unlocked, notifications popping up without a second thought. I never had a reason to dig. But now there was a new passcode. No fingerprint login anymore. No previews on texts or email. Just blank gray banners sliding across her lock screen when I glanced over during dinner. She tapped them away, then flipped the phone face down like it was part of some ritual. I noticed how she started taking her phone with her everywhere. Not just to the bathroom, even to the laundry room, the garage, the backyard. God forbid it left her side for more than 30 seconds. She said it was because of work. Slack's blowing up. Everyone's remote now, so it never stops. It was believable. First. Then there were her workouts. Sophie had never been a gym rat, but she went through phases, yoga in the morning, the occasional spin class. What was strange now wasn't that she was working out. It was that she said she was working out. But her app didn't reflect any of it. We shared an Apple Fitness subscription. I could see when she logged a session, what type of class, duration, all of it. One night, she came home flushed, hair damp, said she'd just done a 5K at the studio. But when I opened the app later, nothing. No entry. No data. Just a blank day. I checked again the next time. Same thing. After a while, I stopped checking the app and just started checking the odometer. That's when things got more confusing. Her commute was short, maybe 10 miles round trip, max. But I started noticing way more mileage on her car than made sense. Hundreds of miles that had no explanation. I didn't bring it up right away. I thought maybe she was doing extra trips, errands, maybe visiting friends. But when I casually asked where she'd gone that day, her answers were always vague. Oh, just work and the store. Which store? I forget. I was just driving around a bit. No mention of the wine country. No mention of remote trailheads. Nothing that would account for full tanks disappearing every week. And then there was the scent. Her car started smelling different. Subtle but noticeable. Not perfume. Something. Cologne. Why? Faint but masculine. I leaned in the first time I noticed it, pretending I dropped my phone. It was strongest near the passenger side. I told myself maybe she gave a coworker a ride. That used to happen. I knew some of her team, but she never mentioned anyone. And when I asked carefully, not accusing, she brushed it off like I was overthinking. "You're seriously sniffing my car now?" she said with a laugh. That's a little crazy. And that's how she framed it every time I got too close to asking a real question. That I was being paranoid, insecure, controlling even. She kept her language ambiguous. "I need space lately. You've been more intense than usual. Maybe we both need to focus on our own stuff for a bit." Focus on our own stuff. That's not how married people talk. That's how people talk when they're emotionally backing out of a room and hoping you don't notice. But the part that really got to me, the part that hurt the most, was how she started reintroducing me to people. We went to a work event for her company, Rooftop Mixer in Seattle, casual but upscale. I was expecting the usual introductions. "This is my husband, Ethan." But that night she said, "This is Ethan, he works in finance." That's all. No mention of us being married. No warmth. Nothing. At first I thought maybe it was just a slip. Maybe she didn't want to make it a thing in a professional setting. But then it happened again. And again. Every event. Every party. Every group hang. I was Ethan from finance. Like a colleague or some guy she used to know. Not the man who painted her office when she changed careers. Not the guy who stayed up all night proofreading her MBA capstone. She stopped holding my hand in public. Her texts got shorter, drier. Her responses started coming hours later, even when I could see she was active on other apps. Slack status green. Instagram stories posted. But my messages? Left hanging. I remember this one Wednesday. Wednesday had become her late nights. Supposedly weekly strategy sessions with her regional partners. She always wore brighter lipstick on those days. Like clockwork. And always changed into nicer clothes right before heading out. This time, she left in a fitted blazer and heels she hadn't worn in months. I asked if she had a presentation. "No," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Just a lot of big personalities in the room. Gotta look sharp." She said it with a little smirk, then walked out the door without a kiss goodbye. That night I checked the shared calendar. Still blank. I pulled up her work events folder on our computer. It had been empty for weeks. There used to be files in there, PDFs, pitch decks, schedules. Now it was just a shell. Even the folder names had changed. Later that week, I stumbled across an old photo album on her phone while searching for an old vacation pic we took in Banff. But when I opened the gallery, half the albums were gone. Wiped. Not moved. Not hidden. Just erased. Trips, birthdays, random date nights, all missing. Only corporate hedge *TS and recent selfies remained. Like someone who was rewriting their history from scratch. I didn't even ask her about it. What was the point? That was the moment I started building a mental inventory of all the little things that felt off. Like the small transfers in our joint account labeled post-briefing dinner. Even though there were no entries for briefings or client meetings. Or the way she started changing clothes immediately when she got home. Before saying hello. Before asking how my day was. Like she couldn't wait to scrub the outside world off her skin. And there was this one time I saw her messaging someone on her company chat app after midnight. She was sitting on the couch with her legs curled under a blanket, typing fast. I asked who she was talking to. "Just Cole," she said. Cole. Her boss. She said it like it was nothing. But I remembered Cole. I'd met him once. Tall, confident, the kind of guy who walks into a room like he owns it. Married too, I think. Or at least he used to be. I asked if everything was okay. "Yeah," she said. "Just going over Q4 stuff." At 12:18 a.m. It would have been a red flag if I hadn't already been living in a field full of them. Still, I said nothing. I just sat there, watching the way her fingers flew across the screen, how her eyes lit up with whatever he was saying. She hadn't smiled at me like that in weeks. There's this saying, you don't really notice someone changing until one day they're a stranger. But that's not how it felt. Felt like I was the stranger. Like I had fallen behind and she had quietly moved on without telling me. Like she had emotionally relocated to some private corner of her life where I didn't belong anymore. And even though she still lived in our house, Sophie was already gone. I wish I could say there was one final straw, a clear line that snapped, but the truth is, I didn't plan the night it all came apart. I was just tired of doubting myself. Tired of trying to piece together half-truths and performative answers. I wanted facts. Something I couldn't reason away later when she smiled at me like nothing had changed. It was a Wednesday. Of course it was a Wednesday. By now, those nights had a pattern. Sophie would get home later than usual, sometimes after 10 p.m., wearing a different outfit than she left in. Slightly more casual, hair let down, lips faintly smudged like she'd wiped off a bold color but hadn't fully erased it. That morning, she'd said she had a networking happy hour with her regional leads at the Westlake Hotel downtown. She mentioned it in passing over toast like it was just another item on her calendar. When I asked who was attending, she gave me a vague list of names I didn't recognize. Then she kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her work tote, and left. The rest of the day, I felt like I was holding my breath. I stared at spreadsheets at work without really processing them. Every phone buzz made me jump. I told myself I wasn't going to spiral, not again. Maybe this time it really was work. Maybe I was just paranoid from too many bad signs stacked on top of each other. But around 8:30 that evening, she texted. Still at the bar. Just a few more drinks with the team. Might be late, don't wait up. Love. Something about it felt staged. She doesn't usually send hearts. And she never tells me not to wait up. Even when she's busy, she checks in. Or at least she used to. I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about calling. Then I thought about pretending not to care. Instead, I did something I hadn't done before. I got in my car and drove. I didn't have a plan. I just typed in the name of the hotel she'd mentioned and parked a few blocks away. My heart was pounding the entire drive. My fingers white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The Westlake was one of those sleek, modern rooftop spots. Lots of glass, soft jazz, and overpriced cocktails. Not the kind of place you went for a company mixer. Not on a Wednesday night. I walked up to the bar's rooftop lounge and scanned the crowd. It wasn't packed, but it wasn't empty either. Couples in booths, suits leaning against high tables, clinking glasses, murmured laughter. I spotted her in under 10 seconds. She was sitting on a low leather couch near the edge of the terrace, drink in hand, legs crossed, laughing. That real laugh, the one I hadn't heard at home in months. And sitting beside her, too close for anything professional, was Cole Dalton, her boss. His hand was resting lightly on the back of the couch behind her, his knee brushing against hers. They weren't doing anything overt, no public display, no tangled limbs. But the way they were looking at each other, that was worse. There's an int asterisk Macy that doesn't need touch to scream betrayal. The way he leaned in when he spoke. The way she tilted her head, smiling like a teenager. The way they clinked glasses in a soft, almost private toast. Then, and I still don't know if it was instinct or impulse, she reached over and touched his hand, and he didn't flinch. He turned his palm and laced his fingers with hers. They kissed. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. Just a short, sure press of lips. Like something they'd done before. Something practiced. I didn't stay long after that. I turned and walked back toward the elevator, heart hammering, ears ringing like I'd been underwater too long. I didn't feel anger yet. Not fully. I felt detached. Like I was watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. Like I'd stepped outside of my body and was watching this man, this idiot husband, realize in real time that he was the last one to know. On the way to my car, I sat on a bench across the street for a full 10 minutes, just watching the rooftop glow. People were drinking, laughing, flirting, and somewhere up there my wife was kissing her boss. No confrontation, no scene, no shouting in the middle of a hotel bar. Just Proof. I drove home on autopilot. The silence in the car was louder than any radio station could have been. My phone buzzed again at 10:41 p.m. Heading home now. Long night. Love you. I didn't reply. I sat on the couch in the dark. Lights off. Door unlocked. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Maybe I wanted to see what her face would look like when she walked in. Maybe I wanted her to walk in and lie to me again so I could finally stop second-guessing myself. She arrived around 11:15. The door opened softly, and she stepped in, heels in one hand, hair slightly windblown. She looked tired, not guilty, not flushed with passion. Just composed, practiced. "Hey," she said, her voice light, like she was trying not to wake me if I'd been asleep. Didn't mean to be out so late. I didn't say anything. She stopped when she saw me sitting there. "Ethan?" She flipped on the entryway light, and I squinted. Her eyes met mine, and I think for a second she knew. Maybe not what I'd seen, but that something had changed. "Is everything okay?" she asked carefully. I studied her. Her makeup was slightly worn. Lipstick faded. A tiny smudge on her neck that didn't look like foundation. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her how long it had been going on. If she loved him. If she planned to leave. If they laughed at me behind my back. But I didn't ask anything. I just stood, nodded once and said, "I'm going to bed." She blinked. "Wait, you're upset." I stopped at the stairs. "Are you asking me? Or telling me?" Silence. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. She didn't follow. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart thudding against my ribs like it wanted out. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile at him. That kiss. That shared look. By morning, she was already gone. Early meeting, apparently. She left a note. Not handwritten, just a post-it stuck to the fridge. "Didn't want to wake you. Let's talk tonight. XOS." I stared at it for a long time before crumpling it and tossing it in the trash. I knew we'd talk, but not the way she wanted. That day, I backed up everything. The receipt, the calendar, the phone records, photos from that night. Nothing too dramatic. Just quiet documentation. A folder on my desktop titled Sophie Truth. And I renamed it again and again until it felt real. The next few days were strange, almost peaceful in a way that made my skin crawl. Sophie didn't suspect anything. Or maybe she did and just didn't want to poke the bear. Either way, she was careful. Smiling more. Making coffee for both of us. Asking if I wanted to join her at a Friday team mixer, even though she knew I'd say no. It felt like living inside a lie with someone who'd already rehearsed the apology. Just waiting for the moment I'd snap so she could perform the regret. But I wasn't going to snap. I was done asking questions. I was done playing the role of the confused husband. The "Are you seeing someone?" husband. The "Why would you lie to me?" husband. That guy always loses. That guy gets manipulated. That guy walks into therapy with a wife who already knows the language of control and blames everything on emotional disconnection. I was done giving her space to lie. Instead, I started collecting the truth. I moved quietly, methodically. I didn't confront. I didn't snoop in the dramatic sense. I just observed and pulled threads. Every inconsistency became a breadcrumb. Every excuse became a timestamp. I wasn't building a confrontation. I was building a case. It started with receipts, literal ones. Sophie wasn't careful about paper trails. She never had to be. She used to joke that she didn't live a secret life, so she never deleted texts or cleared history. But now, she was sloppy in a different way. There were Uber receipts in her email, business rides that didn't match any meetings. Weeknight rides to upscale hotels in neighborhoods where her company had no office. One in particular stuck out. A Tuesday night drop-off at the same boutique lodge in Napa. Not the night I saw her with Cole. A different week entirely. I cross-checked it with our joint calendar. That night, she'd said she had a virtual strategy summit and needed privacy. So she worked from a co-working space until midnight. Except she wasn't at a co-working space. She was in Napa. Again, there were dozens of these inconsistencies. Lyft logs, DoorDash deliveries to addresses I didn't recognize. Hotel confirmations sent to her work email, forwarded to her personal one. I used our shared laptop, nothing sneaky. She just never logged out. Probably thought I'd never look. One night, while she was in the shower, I mirrored her calendar to mine. A full backup. Every meeting title, every color-coded fake. Some meetings were real. Others were clever placeholders, investor brief, vendor onboarding, outreach sync. But none of them matched the internal CRM her company used. I found a link once on her desktop and took **TS. Dates, times, attendees. No Cole. Ever. That's when I realized this wasn't just a personal thing. It was professional, too. If they were using work to cover their relationship, there had to be more overlap. I reached out to someone who might know. Nora. Nora and I weren't close, but we'd met a few times at company events. She was one of Sophie's team leads. Mid-30s, sharp, always polite but a little guarded. She once joked at a company picnic that Cole only promotes women he gets along with after 8 p.m. At the time, I laughed. Sophie didn't. I sent Nora a short message. Nothing dramatic, nothing specific. Hey, can I ask you something off the record about Sophie and Cole? She replied almost immediately. I was wondering when someone would. That sentence alone confirmed everything. We set a time to talk, a short coffee catch-up. I didn't record it. I didn't need to. Nora didn't hold back. She'd noticed the favoritism, the calendar swaps, the mysterious out-of-office syncs that didn't match any department schedule. But she also noticed things I hadn't. Cole had moved Sophie onto multiple high-visibility projects that didn't match her role. He'd overridden HR once to put her on a travel team she wasn't qualified for, to shadow executive presentations, he claimed. When questioned, he said it was part of a mentorship initiative. There was no mentorship initiative. Nora had gone to compliance once, anonymously. Nothing came of it. She said the case went dark. Then Cole gave her a warning for insubordination, and she dropped it. But now, with what I had, she was willing to try again. We didn't blow it up. We submitted quietly. An anonymous tip, this time with documentation. I compiled everything. Travel overlap, hotel stays on the company card, discrepancies between work logs and actual receipts, GPS data from rideshare logs, and side-by-side comparisons of project ownership pre- and post-relationship. Nora contributed a few internal memos that had mysteriously gone missing from shared drives, ones that showed Cole reassigning deliverables without notifying HR. We submitted it all, encrypted, anonymized, to the company's internal compliance line. And then we waited. Took 3 days before anything happened. On the 4th, Sophie came home early. Not dramatically early, just enough to throw off the rhythm of the day. She walked in with her phone in one hand, bag slung low like she didn't have the strength to carry it. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable. I played dumb. Everything okay? I asked, stirring pasta on the stove. She nodded too quickly. Yeah, just a weird day. She didn't elaborate. That night, she barely touched her food. She checked her phone constantly but never responded to anything. At one point, I saw her open the Notes app and start typing, then delete everything. Then she got up and started wiping down the counters for no reason. By morning, I had confirmation. A close friend of mine worked in IT security, different company, but he understood how internal reviews operate. He told me that once a compliance flag gets triggered at Sophie's level, everything gets pulled. Badge logs, expense reports, laptop history, even building entry footage. Especially when it involves a superior. I kept things quiet. I didn't act different. I didn't ask questions. But the next day, I noticed something strange. Sophie's laptop login failed twice. She tried again, then sighed, muttered something about VPN issues, and walked out to the patio to call IT. I didn't follow. That afternoon, she got another call, this one she took in the garage. I caught part of it through the window. I don't know. They said it's just temporary access suspension. I wasn't given details. Later that evening, she said her team had been looped into a systems audit. Sounded official. Sounded vague. I didn't ask. I just nodded. By the end of the week, she wasn't working at all. She said she was on leave, said it was a personal development break. Whatever that means. Her face looked hollow when she said it, like someone reciting a script they didn't believe in. Then one night, late, after midnight, she asked me softly, "Are we okay?" I didn't answer, not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I didn't know what okay even meant anymore. By the time I went to bed, she was still sitting in the kitchen, staring at her phone like it might tell her what came next. There wasn't a dramatic explosion, no company-wide email, no office gossip chain breaking the sound barrier, no police escort or teary press conference. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It came in pieces, quietly, precisely, like a storm that had already passed. But only now was the damage starting to show. Sophie didn't say anything at first. She just stopped pretending. The energy she used to carry, the curated, high-achieving glow, it faded. Not all at once, but in small ways that were impossible to miss if you were paying attention. She stopped wearing makeup in the mornings, stopped checking her planner. Her carefully ironed blazers and tailored pantsuits were replaced with hoodies she used to make fun of. Her hair went from styled to just pulled back, always out of the way. That same week, her name disappeared from the upcoming executive meeting agenda. I only knew that because she left her tablet open on the coffee table one morning, and I noticed the memo, Q4 strategy session, revised participants. Everyone who used to report to her was still listed. Her name wasn't. I asked nothing. She offered nothing. 3 days later, I overheard her on a call in the guest room, her work-from-home corner that had slowly turned into an echo chamber of half-truths. "I understand." "No, I wasn't aware those expenses were flagged." "Well, some of them were business-related. I didn't need to hear the rest." By the time she hung up, her face looked like someone had drained the light out of her. She sat in silence for 10 full minutes, just staring at her reflection in the black screen of the monitor. Later that night, she said she might take a break from work. I nodded. She said the company was reorganizing, and that she might be moving into a transition role. I nodded again. What she didn't say. They had already pulled her access, reassigned her accounts, frozen her corporate card, and restructured her team. What she didn't know. I had already seen the internal email through Nora, short, clinical, and damning. Effective immediately, Sophie Dalton's project responsibilities will be redistributed among current department leads. Until further notice, all inquiries should be directed to the Office of Corporate Compliance. Please do not contact Ms. Dalton directly regarding open initiatives. They didn't fire her outright. Not yet, but they'd started the slow erasure. The kind companies use when they want someone to go away quietly. No lawsuits, no headlines. Just a fade out. One deletion at a time. And at home, I started doing the same. First, I moved our joint account access to view only and removed her name from the shared credit card. She noticed within a day but didn't mention it. Probably thought it was part of financial tension. Or maybe she was too distracted by her own unraveling to care. Then I started separating our things. I rented a small storage unit across town and began packing up the less obvious items. Duplicate kitchen tools, old decor, random mementos I knew I wouldn't want when this was all over. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it to prepare. Quietly, privately, while she still clung to the illusion that she could patch this up. When mutual friends texted us, or rather, texted me, to ask why Sophie hadn't RSVP'd to dinners or work functions, I told them plainly, she's been taking time off. Some things came up internally. I gave no further details. I offered no opinions. Just facts. Let the blanks fill themselves in. The truth has a way of leaking out when you leave the door open just a crack. A week later, I started getting vague messages from former colleagues of hers. "Hey, just wanted to check in. I heard there was some stuff going on at the company. Hope everything's okay." Translation: we heard she got caught. We just don't know how bad it is yet. I didn't reply. Then the real fallout began. Her name, which had once been everywhere, started disappearing. Company newsletters, team acknowledgements, invite lists for conferences. social posts celebrating leadership wins. All of them revised. All of them edited. All of them scrubbed clean of Sophie Dalton. I don't think she fully understood what was happening until the HR call came in. The one she took in the living room while I was pretending to read emails at the dining table. She answered on speaker without thinking. "Hi, this is Sophie." A pause. "Yes, of course. I understand." "The final report, you mean?" "I just want to say, I didn't mean to." Another pause. Her jaw clenched. "Understood. Please send me a written summary." She hung up without looking at me. That night she didn't eat dinner. Didn't scroll her phone. Didn't pour her usual glass of wine. She just sat on the couch with the lights off, staring at the space between her knees like it might answer the question she hadn't found the courage to ask yet. How did I lose control so quickly? She used to walk into every room like she owned it, like she'd already solved the problem before anyone asked the question. But now, she moved like she was trying to be invisible. A guest in her own house. A ghost in the place she'd once run like an empire. And still, she didn't ask me anything. Not about the folder she saw open on my laptop, marked Compliance Private. Not about the sudden boundary lines I started drawing. Separate groceries, separate plans, separate everything. Not even when I told her I was going to spend the weekend getting some space at my brother's cabin, and left without asking if she wanted to come. She just nodded and said, "Drive safe." The next morning, when I returned, half her closet had been emptied. Not everything, just enough to send a message. She knew, not what I'd done, but what she'd lost. Control, leverage, her audience. In the days that followed, she tried once or twice to reassert a version of normal. She cooked dinner, asked if I wanted to watch something mindless, even suggested we take a long weekend trip. Just us, no distractions. I said I was busy. She didn't argue. Her attempts slowed. Her presence shrank. She stopped calling people, stopped answering them. Even Nora told me later that Sophie had gone dark. No messages, no meetings, no email replies. Like she wanted to pretend none of it had ever happened. But it had. And even if she never admitted it out loud, I could see it in the way she looked at me now. Not with guilt exactly, but with exhaustion. Like she'd been running this con so long. She didn't know how to exist without it. The final, ironic twist? Sophie wasn't fired. Not officially. She resigned 2 weeks later, citing mental health and professional realignment, in a generic LinkedIn post full of vague gratitude and curated optimism. The kind of message written more for investors than friends. A few comments, some recycled praise. No likes from leadership. A digital shrug. And then, just like that, she was gone. No titles. No profile flair. No banner about driving impact. Just Sophie Dalton, former strategy director. She used to brag about being irreplaceable. Now she was just replaced. And at home, I was no longer angry, just done. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask her to explain the nights in Napa or the late messages with Cole or the months she spent pretending she was still in love with me. Instead, I printed a new list. Bank accounts, utilities, insurance, mortgage, subscriptions. Everything we had entangled, now scheduled for separation. No emotion, no fight, just logistics. Because the worst kind of betrayal isn't loud. It's not the slammed doors or shouted confessions. It's the silence that follows when someone who once looked you in the eye every day realizes you've stopped waiting for the truth. And for the first time since this all began, Sophie didn't try to stop me. Sophie filed for wrongful termination, claiming bias. At the hearing, her case collapsed. The company brought booking logs, ride data, and Nora's statement. I submitted the full timeline, including the night I saw them kiss. The panel ruled unanimously. Ethics breach, misuse of resources, conflict of interest. Her appeal was dismissed. Her career didn't end in fire, just silence. A week later, I found divorce papers on the kitchen table signed. No note, no excuses. She left her key. I closed joint accounts, moved to a smaller place, and started over. No anger, no revenge, just facts. I jogged mornings by the bay, kept to myself, and rebuilt quietly. Some people see truth as closure. I saw it as permission to leave, to breathe, to begin again.